Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be back with my co-host Nithya. We have an awesome show for you today, but I am going to let her open it up because she has been running point on a lot of the conversations we've had with clients lately.
Well, yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and thanks for being back with us today, Doug. We're always so happy to have you and to learn from you. I've noticed a pattern in some of our client conversations lately, and it always comes back to the PESO model and how clients can optimize the use of their media and placing it in specific places to really help build their authority and reach their audience where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive in, I learned something probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't remember the conference I was at, but the speaker was talking about how important distribution is. And that goes for like building a business. And I started to think about content's perspective of distribution and how important content distribution really is. And the speaker gave the example of Starbucks. There are so many Starbucks across the globe. It doesn't matter if it's a mug or if it's coffee. If you wanted to move product pretty much to the corner of every neighborhood across the globe, Starbucks is an incredible distribution channel. But when it comes to getting content in front of people, we had to figure out how can we use multiple platforms to get our content in front of the right people. And to your point, one of the things you brought up, a lot of our clients have trying to figure out lately, I'm comfortable with Twitter or I'm comfortable with LinkedIn, but it's not always the case of where their audience actually is. So it might not be the right platform. So you hear a lot of people talking about things like omni-channel marketing or, being in every channel all the time. And when it comes to simplifying that strategy, one of the tools that we use, which you mentioned, is called PESO, which stands for paid. Where can we promote the content? Earned. How can we leverage other people, other platforms? Might be, the media, for example. PR is one of the most consistent forms of earned. Shared. So, are there influencers who are willing to participate, maybe co brand? Are there brands who are willing to share our content? And then the last and single most important is owned. And the whole point of why we built this show is to demonstrate the importance of building your own audience so that you can continue to have conversations with them, build their trust, and ultimately find a way to work together by providing value.
Amazing.
This simple breakdown.
That is exactly what I was going to ask you to do. But so now that we understand what the PESO model is, where does a business start? Like, what would be their first move?
I find that's the hardest question for most people because it's really overwhelming to go beyond just organic. And if you go back, 3 to 5 years, the organic reach on Facebook, as an example, was really good. You could start a Facebook page, you could integrate, but when they started to move more and more towards a pay to play model, it became really hard to get organic reach. And that's pretty typical of almost anything. If you go way back in history, think about things like, radio. When radio first started, it wasn't necessarily medium, but they figured out, hey, we have the attention of an audience. And I think this is one of our first videos where we talk about the importance of attention. Platforms realized, hey, I can monetize this attention. So eventually you had radio ads. So the only way a brand could get in, the first TV programming was actually a soap opera. So a soap company decided, hey, I'm going to create programming and feature our product. And that was the start. And then they realized, well, I'm going to move beyond that. We're going to start to pay for other products to get in. And you still see that in movies today. Ryan Reynolds always finds a way to get aviation gin in every one of his new movies. So product placement's never gone away.
That's amazing.
But like as people try to understand, like, how do I prioritize which things to do first? I think it's really important to almost take a step back and figure out, where is my audience? And a lot of people, when they develop a strategy, they talk about a persona or their archetype or who is their customer. But it doesn't have to be this huge exercise. It's just important to understand, where are the people I want to do business with? What are they talking about? And what's the best way for me to get my content in front of people? You don't have to start necessarily by doing all four, but figure out what's the one that might work. For some businesses, like doing a sponsorship deal and speaking at an event might be one of the best ways that they can get their attention. It doesn't always have to be digital. I mean, in our space, one of the best lead gen things we do is either speaking or in person training. And thank God we can get back in person because I miss seeing people. But
Yes.
it's really important to just figure out what's the best mechanism to start a conversation. And that right there is probably the easiest way to simplify how to use the PESO model to your advantage. Because again, it's not always digital. It's just trying to figure out what's the best way to distribute content that starts the conversation to build a relationship for us.
So I think it would be easy to think that spreading yourself thin and trying a little bit of everything would be the best way to reach people. But what you're saying is using the PESO model, you can use a strategic approach to finding your audience and putting your efforts where you know they'll be. And that can be more influential than trying everything, putting something out everywhere and waiting for bites.
You know, I got stuck watching Sweet Home Alabama a couple weekends ago, and there was a quote where I can't remember Reese's character, but her mom said, "You can't ride two horses with one ass." Actually, I think it was her dad. And I think that same thing applies when you're trying to start developing a content strategy. And most brands, if they just double down where they can have the most meaningful conversations with their customers, that's where they can build a true audience. And then starting to branch out and figure out where are the adjacencies, where is my audience moving. And in some cases, if you have a more complex sales cycle, you might need to have different conversations at different stages. For example, like if you have, let's say, a LinkedIn group, or there's a community or a Facebook group, and you know that a lot of your audience sits in this community, be active there. And then if that particular community organization has an event, then try to get on stage at that particular event. And I could tell you in almost every single industry, there's an industry association. So there's some type of group or gathering where you can add value. And there's almost always some type of event where you can participate. Now, when it comes to developing and locking that into a strategy, it's trying to figure out like where and which order do I do it? I would almost tell everybody be active in the community first, add value, create content. You don't even need to create a show like we're creating here. You could simply just answer questions in the chat sections within the forums or, the community group online, if whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook, and then work with the event organizers. They'll have been used to seeing you and say, "Hey, look, yeah, you know what? You've given to our community. We'd love to speak." Now, certain shows pretty large, they need revenue to put them on. You may want to join that up with a sponsorship just to guarantee that. But just take the time to figure out what do we need to do to be active to curate conversations? And then how do you put your content in the front seat to make sure that your audience you want to see it is going to see it?
Amazing. That kind of answers where I was going to take this next, which was like, if a business is already applying the PESO model, how could they optimize this strategy and strengthen this to build their authority in that space?
So one of the more advanced things I would suggest, and we have a video called the customer loyalty framework. The first two steps of it are really focused on just good business principles and getting more returns. But when you go through steps 3 to 5, it really focuses on how do you create shareable content. And I think a lot of brands fall into the trap of being, product or feature benefit oriented. They try to say like, "Hey, look how good we are. Look at what we're doing. Look at how awesome we are," as opposed to creating content that's helpful. Like show something. And one of my favorites, my wife showed me this during COVID. Granted, we were locked inside. There's a company called Go Clean Co. She has probably some of the best content on cleaning, and it's everything you could probably think of. Any stain, even just cleaning your walls using white powder Tide, which, to be honest, at the time we had kids that were 4 and 5, now 6 and 8. They're
Super
constantly coming with
handy.
muddy hands. But like that content solved a huge problem for us. And every business and every person that I've ever met, they have some type of unique knowledge or some little thing that's going to make people's lives easier. And hopefully we're accomplishing that today as we go through this content, but sharing your knowledge and believing in the law of reciprocity, meaning that if you give, you usually will receive back, but do that without expectation. And the brands that tend to master that approach and realize if we are giving and providing value and building an audience and people are sharing that, that's how you create the exponential reach. And that is the tool that'll outpace salespeople. But then as you develop the bottom of the funnel and start to carry conversations, it helps nurture the growth of the business. And that's why we're so bullish on creating video, because there's no better medium, no easier way than for people to share this. It's really easy for people to engage, to watch. Now, as you get advanced, we have a couple different ways that we optimize content, put it on other platforms, but it's not this overwhelming process. If you just double down and focus on having the one conversation in the right platform, once you have that asset, you can then break it down and share it across multiple others.
Which is something we help businesses do. If you found value in this video, please feel free to share it. And also, we wanted to invite you to comment below and let us know what strategies have been working for you with sharing content and reaching your audience in the right places, the right time. What interesting ways have worked for you?
Yeah, I really want to hear from brands or individuals who are cross-promoting content, especially those who are going TikTok to Instagram, TikTok to LinkedIn, or other platforms. So anytime you're repurposing content, would love to see how you're doing it. Would love to share your content. So if you have an example or you've posted on multiple platforms, please show the links below, put them in the comments so that we have some things to share, just to give examples of what you're doing and what's helping you grow your audience.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us today, Doug.
My pleasure. It's always fun. We'll see everybody next week.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.